We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meakin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. A quick note before we get started that there may be some swearing in today's podcast. If you don't like swearing or usually listen with children in the car, you have been warned. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. This episode of What in the NDIS Now is brought to you by Astalty. Astalty is the software solution for NDIS professionals built by NDIS professionals. Astalty is my go-to software, and Astalty is trusted and loved by hundreds of other NDIS providers. I love how easy it is to use and how it keeps all my participant information, notes, and invoicing all in one place, available to me anytime from any device. Sign up now for your 14-day free trial. Head to astalty.com.au to sign up now. See for yourself how much easier managing all your NDIS business needs are by using Astalty. Thanks again to Astalty for sponsoring today's episode. Hey, welcome to the episode. I'm really excited to see you and introduce you to today's episode. Before I do that, I wanted to tell you a bit about my week from hell that happened last week. In particular, I had a participant who had their change of situation be resolved, and the planner was on the phone talking to me and the participant at the same time, and they said they're only allowed to have a maximum of 6 hours per week because of the diagnosis of autism. Now, of course, I'd never heard that before and was very confused and asked where in the legislation it says that. She said that the LAC would provide me with that and she would not be discussing it any further. She then took away support coordination and said that the participant no longer qualified for support coordination. My poor participant while on the phone, was audibly crying, and the planner just continued to plow through her script without stopping, without showing empathy, and it was awful. I got off the phone and straight away called my participant and I said, "Don't worry about anything that planner said. We will straight away do a review." But of course, that doesn't help the participant in the meantime. It is horrifying to me that there are planners who are completely without compassion and even a shred of empathy, and don't even stop to say something like, "This is all I could do. I'm sorry if you're having a hard time with this." Anything could have helped. And it was just really emotional because I know that this participant really needs support coordination. Anyway, I will now tell you a bit about the guest today. So our guest today is Jade from Wheelnutz. Now, I loved this conversation. I think Jade is an amazing person doing amazing work, and I would love to see this work expanded. And as we talk about in the podcast, would love to see other trades come on board and adopt that sort of a model to support people who are on the NDIS. It's a really amazing conversation. Sam and I loved having it. It was in a caravan that was very hot. I think you should go out and see the garage because the garage they've got is amazing. And I really wanted to say hi to everyone in the garage listening today. We loved seeing you're working on the cars. It was great. Now on with the episode. So today on the podcast, we have Jade. Welcome to the podcast, Jade.
Thank you.
So our first question, as always, is where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sydney, spent the first 12 years of my life in Sydney, did primary school and the first year of high school. And through a range of circumstances, we then moved to Queensland. I did high school in Queensland. And again, another change in circumstance saw the family then move to Melbourne. So I then did uni in Melbourne. So I've lived in quite a few places and in quite a few states. And the travelling didn't stop there, but I found myself a couple of years ago in a position, I was actually in Broome at the time, in the Kimberley, and was in a position to almost start over again and needed to work out where I wanted to go, anywhere in the world, and decided that Brisbane for me was home, so it was time to come back home.
That sounds fair enough to me.
We've had lots of people that have migrated into Queensland and now call it home, including both of us.
Yeah, there we go.
So how did you get into the disability sector?
Look, I've been a social worker for 25 years. So it's really the only job I've ever done and the only thing I've really ever been interested in, and started the first 10 years as a drug and alcohol counsellor. So worked with young people around, supporting them to find ways in which to break the cycle of addiction and homelessness and all kinds of things, and went from there into family and youth services. And whilst I was working for a large provider in Victoria, I had the opportunity to, was offered a management role in disability. It was something that I had never considered. And to be fair, when you think of disability, it's not particularly sexy. So, but I had also, it was really, really early days that there were some rumblings about wanting to transform the world of disability, and there was this NDIS thing coming on its way, and it seemed like a really great opportunity to jump into the unknown and potentially help shape what that unknown was going to be. So I accepted the position. So that was 15 years ago now. Worked in the disability sector in Victoria for many years. Then went travelling and found myself in the Kimberley. Worked in disability across the Kimberley. And yeah, after a couple of years, decided to come back to Brisbane. So Queensland is the third state. I've worked in the NDIS space.
Amazing. It would have been very different in the Kimberley.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It really was a bucket list, but I didn't know it at the time. I was actually travelling and had no intention of going back to work for some time. Needed a bit of a gap year and needed to step back a bit, and was feeling a little burnt out. And there's this awesome disability service in Broome, and they were advertising for a receptionist. And I went, you know what, I can do that. That's not going to be too stressful. Turned up at the interview, had the interview. The CEO turned around and went, "You're no receptionist. We actually need a manager." So reluctantly at the time I went, sure, bring it on. And just spent the next 18 months absolutely loving every aspect of it. So my role really was around engaging Aboriginal community into the world of NDIS. So travelling in and out of community, engaging families and individuals, providing them information around what the NDIS is, how it would be of benefit to them, how it would benefit their communities, and just a really lovely 18 months. I still look back on it really fondly. There were some really awesome memories I've had coming out of that. And, just sitting in parks, having awesome conversations with large groups of people and just, kids running wild. And, there's this white girl driving in and out of community. And I really wondered, just how welcomed I would be. But absolutely welcomed with open arms. And I guess the difference was I didn't go into it with any preconceived ideas. And I think I went into it more grateful that they were happy for me to be there, as opposed to me going in there and kind of imposing my will or any of that kind of thing. So it really was probably one of the best experiences I've had.
Awesome. So what do you do now?
So now I am the co-founder and director of Wheelnutz Garage. Wheelnutz Garage is a one-of-a-kind service. We teach people how to repair and restore vehicles. So most of the guys and girls that come to the garage have NDIS plans. Not all of them do. We've certainly got some folks who are funded through NISQ. But they, automotives or mechanics or just simply nice shiny cars are their interest, and we've created a space where they can come and share that interest with others. We've got an awful lot of people who have some kind of ambition to go on to training or paid employment in the automotive space. We've also got a large group of folks who have no interest or maybe not the capacity for employment or training, but they just love cars and they just want that place in the world they can come, socialise, mingle, form friendships with people who like the same things as them, and just come down for the social connection.
And we are podcasting from the garage today, so there is noise and it's a hive of activity. So you might hear that a little bit in the background. I love the idea of it. So now you've expanded. You've got a garage in sort of the Logan area and then another one in Brendale.
Yep.
And now you've got a coffee van.
Very good coffee. It's sustaining my morning.
Awesome. Yeah, look, Wheelnutz Garage itself actually started in our garage at home on the Gold Coast. So we started with 2 young people and 1 staff member turning up at home 9 o'clock every morning. I'm still in my PJs. And we got to the point where we needed to get out of home and move into a commercial premise. So our first garage was actually on the Gold Coast. So opened up at the Gold Coast, found that there was lots and lots of demand from the Logan area. So opened up a garage in Logan. And then found, again, we were getting lots of phone calls from the north side of Brisbane. So after about 12 months of research, basically, we turned up to expos and we asked one question, the same question for every person that turned up at the table, and that was, if we were to open another garage, where would it be? Write it down. And 90% of people put down some suburb on the north side. So 12 months of research to realise that Brendale was probably the place to be. So I opened a garage in Brendale. In the meantime, we've, I guess the model we have developed here at Wheelnutz really could be applied to any trade. It could, when we started Wheelnutz, we probably had about a dozen ideas. We could have gone any way. And what we've kind of developed, we do automotives. Automotives is probably our number 1 love, so that's why we do that. But it could be carpentry, it could be electrical, it could be hairdressing. Pick a trade, it's a model that could be applied to any of them. So we've started looking at how we kind of expand those skills, and Coffee Nuts Cafe is one of those. So we've got a little coffee van just at the entrance of the garage. We've got a young person in there every day learning the art of barista. We will expand on that and start selling food and that kind of thing as well. But again, it's just providing them some additional skills that potentially will get them into some kind of paid employment.
Yeah, that's really good. And you've had a lot of good success stories coming out of both the garage and the cafe, even in a short time as well.
Yeah. We to be honest, it has taken us by surprise. We've had lots of really great recognition, we've won some really lovely rewards, and we always go home at the end of the night and go, how on earth did that happen? There's been lots and lots of reflection. The challenge has been we're the only ones that do this. So we don't have an instruction manual that provides us any kind of framework around not only how to do this, but how to do it well.
Yeah, and you've done speaking on framework, one of the key things that I love about how you've tackled that is what you're calling your outcomes framework. Yep. And the moment I saw this when you sort of published it, I was spruiking it on LinkedIn and every other platform and going, providers, this is your gold standard. Yep. Can you run us through both what it is and what you're using it for and how you came about it? Because it's something a lot of providers don't necessarily think of when they're developing and coming up with their service delivery offerings.
Yeah. Look, where it kind of came from, I guess my experience in being part of the disability sector pre-NDIS, being privy to and being exposed to what were the grand ideas around what the NDIS was supposed to deliver at the time and, what was the dream. And the dream for the NDIS, 12, 13, 14 years ago was that it was always supposed to be outcomes-based. So we weren't going to go to all this time and energy and cost and, it's been an absolute grind to get the program to where it is. And we weren't going to do all of that without having the ability to capture what exactly we are doing. So we have adopted the Outcome Star. So the Outcome Star is an international outcomes framework, and it's something that I used in youth and family back in Victoria 20 years ago. I just kind of popped it in the back of my reference mind and it would come handy again at some point. And it's, the Outcome Star, there's about 20 different stars you can choose from. You pick the star that relates best to the services you're providing. The star we use is called the Student Star. So it's been developed especially for students with learning challenges, and it best applied to what we're doing here in the garage. There's, I think, 10 different aspects on the star, and we just get the guys and girls to grade where they think they are between 1 to 10. And we do that regularly, and we're able to then track change. Lovely for an organisation to see that we're actually doing something useful, but the reality is it's far more beneficial for the guys and girls in the garage to see that they're actually learning. They've got the capacity to be more than who they thought they were on day one. So, by day 30, they've gone, I've actually learnt something, or I actually feel a whole lot better about myself. I've grown not just in my skills, but also in my confidence. And I've actually got that piece of paper that I can take home and show mum or show dad or show nan or go, look, I can actually do stuff. So for us to be able to capture that, to print it off, and the guys and girls be able to take it home, it was a really important thing for us. A lot of our young people, schooling has been a really difficult experience. So there's so many things that we take for granted, like being able to go home on the last day of term with a report card and be really proud of it. Like, a lot of our guys haven't had that experience. So if we can provide that experience for them, have something that will reflect their growth, then we're going to find a way in which to do that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And we talk a lot about quality in this industry, but quantifying quality is hard.
Yep.
It's not exactly the easiest task. I remember when I was starting out looking at AAP, and it was sort of around when I was getting serious, it was actually the same time you sort of launched the outcomes framework. And I'm like, yep, cool, I'm adopting this whole idea. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. Because it's not something that you can easily sort of go, there's a benefit here. Yep. But then to be able to sort of use that kind of the principles, the STAR, or whatever your outcome framework that you've just settled on is, then to be able to use that and then go back to when someone goes, oh, but why are we spending taxpayers' money on this? Yeah. Well, here's the benefits as to why. It helps build independence. It helps build skills. They're all very important things, but I think a lot of service providers don't recognise the real opportunities they have by doing so.
Yeah. Look, being able to introduce an outcomes framework was, again, one of our non-negotiables when we decided sitting on the lounge one night on a Friday night with a glass of wine and going, what are we going to do with our lives? And
all the best ideas come with wine.
I know. And, my partner Gavin and I, we got to the point where we'd had, really successful 30-year careers, and you kind of get to that point in life where you go, we've kind of got the resources, we've got the time, we've got the experience, we've got the know-how, we can kind of now create something ourselves. And so we kind of delved into that conversation, but there were lots of non-negotiables that we really quickly identified, and being able to capture exactly what we're doing was one of those. Another really simple one of those was we were never going to walk around with, labelled uniforms and badged cars. It was just a no-go zone for us. I could talk about this forever, but, there are just some things, I should be able to pop down to Coles and grab some groceries without having a walking billboard beside me telling every single person that I'm a person with a disability and I have a paid... it's just yuck. So there were lots of those things that we identified really quickly and just labelled them as just no-go zones. So, we just needed to capture our outcomes. It was just something that, wasn't up for discussion.
So one of the things I love about what you do is that a staff member can show a participant exactly what they're doing step by step. So they don't have to come with any car knowledge because they will get it. You have staff that know how to break down the steps to doing whatever needs to be done on a car.
Yep.
And I love that idea.
Yeah. I think there's lots of thought that's gone into how do we make this work. One of the really important things for us is most of our staff have lived experience. They've either got a disability themselves or they've got a direct family member, a child or a parent with a disability. But they also come from the trades. So they've got a background in trades. So the staffing group are a fairly rare breed. Staffing is a nightmare because trying to find somebody who has an experience in trades but also the understanding of how to support a person with a disability is really difficult to come by. So the staff have some pretty magical ways in which to engage somebody in a task. One of the really important aspects of the garage is we don't have paid customers. We don't have customers that bring their car to be worked on. That would be awesome financially. That would be a complete game changer. But the reality would be that we would shift our priorities completely from our young people in the garage learning to then meeting the deadlines and the expectations of a paid customer. So we've set the garage up in such a way that the guys and girls have all the time they need to understand, to ask the questions, to seek clarification, to try, to fail, to try, to succeed. There's no rush. And if it takes them all day to change an oil filter, well then, so be it.
Look, I think it'll take me 2 weeks.
But if they all leave at the end of the day going, I can change an oil filter now, I've learnt something. I'm feeling really good about myself. I've managed to connect with one of my peers in doing it. I've kind of proved everybody wrong because, before now they thought I was quiet and shy, but actually I asked some really good questions today. That's what it's all about. The cars at the end of the day really aren't the important things. They're just the shiny things that get people through the door. It's all the other stuff that they're learning along the way.
It's really important, that, and it definitely shows.
Yeah.
So now that everyone is hooked on this idea, what sort of programs do you have and how do they run, and what funding do people need to be able to come here?
Yeah. So we've got a few programs. So the most popular is Wheelnutz Garage. So we've got a mainstream program, and that's suitable for young people around 12, 13 up. we've got a number of gentlemen in their late 60s. So anyone and everyone in between, if you've got a love of cars, you're welcome to, come through the door. How they use their funding or what bucket of funding they choose to use kind of depends on what they've got, but also what's the main reason or what's the goal for them coming here. But we've certainly got a very vast range of core and capacity line items that people choose to use. We have started a junior mechanics program in the last few months. We were just getting more and more primary school age children approaching.
That's amazing.
Approaching us. And I think some of that has been driven by schools themselves. So, we've got lots of little fellas, 8, 9, 10, really difficult engagement at school. Schools seeing lots of behaviours that they're finding really difficult to respond to. And so schools are approaching us and almost, trying to barter. How about you take this child one day and we'll take him for 4? We're like, sure. No worries at all. So we've got lots of schools kind of, wanting to implement Wheelnutz Garage as part of their curriculum, which we're more than happy with. We work with lots and lots of schools around that stuff. And
do you also do some after-school stuff then?
No. We have tried it, and look, whilst on the face of it, there's often lots of queries for it, it doesn't necessarily then go anywhere. So the program runs 9 to 4. We're also really mindful that the day's not too long for people. Again, at the end of the day, we could run it 12 hours and have everybody paying for 12 hours and the bank account would look awesome. But we'd then have a really big group of participants and staff who were just not enjoying the experience whatsoever because it just becomes a chore after a while. So we've got our junior mechanics, so they start at about 5 or 6. So they're kind of our primary school age children. We then have Coffee Nuts Cafe, as we mentioned earlier. But outside of the garage, we do lots of STA and adventure-based respite on the weekend. So as you'll notice, a lot of the vehicles that they're working on are four-wheel drives. It's our love and our passion. And, if we weren't doing this, we'd be doing it anyway at home. But a lot of these guys will be working on a particular vehicle. They might be doing some modifications or, putting some aftermarket products on that. They'll then go to Fraser Island for a few days and just test it out. They often come back with something broken, which just gives them something to do the next week.
I love that idea so much.
Maintaining work in the shop.
Yeah, exactly right. Creating their own jobs.
Don't want anyone to get too bored.
Exactly. So, look, it started off as very male kind of domain, but I'm actually really pleased that that's kind of shifted. We've got some really cool females in the garage now as well. And most of our staff are male and they're very good at engaging, particularly our young guys. We've got an awful lot of young fellas who not only have disabilities, but they're also part of the child safety system as well. So, our guys are really good at understanding their needs and engaging them in conversation. But it's been a nice kind of leveller having some females now in the garage because all the guys are on their best behaviour now. Like, nobody wants to act like a dick, in front of the girls. So I'm just like, bring it on. It's really, really
Girl
cool.
power all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
We were talking before we started recording about the outcomes framework, and you mentioned just 6 C's. Now, I've got 6 P's, which is planning, preparation, prevents piss poor performance. But what are your 6 C's?
That was actually quoted this morning at the morning meeting.
What? Oh, yes. Vindication.
I so knew you were going to ask me. I actually can't remember them all. So, look, we implemented our outcomes framework. It was a really important part of it. We then got to the point where we realised we were having really similar conversations with a lot of people, and we wanted to provide the staff with some kind of framework around how to engage people in those conversations. And it very much came out of the need for us to be more aware and better trained around the trauma-informed support that a lot of our guys needed. So we went on a bit of a fishing expedition and actually came across a framework that a youth service in the States users. They actually have 5 C's, but I came across another C and I just added to it. So, it's a positive development framework, and, it allows the guys to kind of shape a conversation with a young person and help that young person kind of be part of a conversation. It might be about contribution. So, a lot of our guys go, I can't do this. Well, rather than getting into the can'ts, let's look at, well, what is your contribution then? So it's just providing the staff with some framework, with some language. Also allows we've got lots of posters up around the place, and it allows our guys to, I guess, understand if I start talking to somebody about communication, they go, oh, communication, that's one of those C's that's up on the wall. This is something that I can talk about, or, this is part of the conversations that I have in this particular environment. So, it's just another developmental framework that we use. I guess it helps us to have more meaningful conversations. And this is a bit stereotypical, but there's lots of conversations in the garage, which is just a lot of, everyone's just casting a lot of shade, and, it's all just, a bit of rough and tumble. And there's a really big emphasis on being able to form relationships and communicate with peers in a way that's respectful, but at the same time, there's still lots of banter that goes on and that kind of thing as well. So, again, it's about providing everybody with a bit of structure around how we can have lots of fun, how we can, kind of throw a bit of shade on somebody if they deserve it because they've done something really stupid and they know it. And, so throw around a few jokes and just have a really awesome, positive time, but it still be respectful. So that's kind of the reason why we've got the positive development framework in place as well.
I really love that. That must. How did your staff sort of adopt? What do they think? How do they feel? What are their thoughts now after implementing it?
It's been a journey. I think it's been a journey more for the staff than our guys. Again, our staff have kind of worked in the trades for decades. So, some of them are a bit stuck in their ways. So a lot of it has been on my part, kind of just initiating conversations with them using that language, almost like they understand it, but they often need an example that they can then take and use elsewhere. It's also one of those things that's really easy to implement something, but often you need to give people permission to use it as well. Sometimes they think, oh, maybe that's just a thing that the managers do, or that's just a thing that the owners do. No, this is for everyone. Take it and run with it. If it's all a bit too much as a whole, just take a bit of it. Go and, throw it out there, see what happens, and if you get a really good response, come back and grab another piece. So, it's been lots of providing people, I guess, with examples that they can then adopt into their language as well. So I'll often ask staff, so how's your contribution been today? And they'll go, oh, here we go. You're just throwing C's at me. Yes, I am.
Rightfully so. Because we've got it's all well and good for admin managers to sort of put stuff in place and go, yeah, this is a brilliant idea. Yeah. But your employee buy-in from your wider cohort is really important, and that's also hard to do. It's not an easy feat to get everyone to implement a system and get them going, cool, I want to do this. Yeah. Maybe you get some awesome staff that go for gold, but not everyone likes change.
And I think, again, it comes back to my experience. Having worked in human services for 25 years, you kind of see a lot. And I've worked for some of the really big organisations, and we know that they're terrible at this stuff. And there's been multiple occasions where, from above, they've rolled out something and all the staff are like, not another thing. But there's been no effort to explain why it's important. There's been no effort made to, allow people to understand, where do I apply it? So I guess my previous experience around that stuff kind of helps know how to do that stuff better.
Very useful.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. That is exactly my experience of big orgs. So I love that so much. So it's come to the time in the podcast where I'm going to ask you, in your ideal world, what would the future of the NDIS look like?
Look, the NDIS as a scheme, I'm actually quite positive about. Like I've kind of been part of it for a long, long time, and I bought in really quickly to the dream before it even came. And I guess being part of the world pre-NDIS kind of gave me a really lovely opportunity to sit and reflect on what we had at the time, and it wasn't great for a lot of people. So the NDIS itself, the scheme itself, I actually really love, and I think there's far more positive stories that have come out of it than not so positive stories. I think, though, where I still struggle today is just the lack of innovation that the service sector, we still have organisations, even brand new organisations who have started with a clean slate, could do anything in the world, still creating the same old, very traditional, stale, really limited kind of service delivery. And I think if, I look at Wheelnutz and again, still surprised we're the only ones that do this. And we will often go home at night and just kind of throw around conversations as to the whys and the wheres. And we understand some of the limitations around creating a Wheelnutz, for example. It's the NDIS doesn't fund innovation. We can only charge the same amount that an independent support worker can charge. Our overheads include cars, vehicles, tools, hoists. Somehow we need to financially make it sustainable and work.
Gas lifts aren't cheap.
Exactly right. It's probably not surprising how many tools we break a day.
Yeah.
How
many cars you take over to Fraser and bash up.
Exactly right. The need to be really mindful around risk means that we probably overinvest in a lot of ways because we want people to, one, be safe, but also it be a positive experience. So if there's a particular tool which normally would cost you $50 in your home garage, but we need a tool that most of our guys can use and use successfully, and it costs $300, well, we're buying the $300 tool. So we understand the reasons why we're probably, the only ones doing this. But when we dive a little deeper, I still, there's lots of social groups around, but what seems to be the common factor in these social groups is everyone has a disability. Like, how weird. Why are there not more services or, not more groups out there that are targeting interests and skills and passions and loves, and as opposed to disabilities? So I kind of hope that the service sector itself, really starts to put up a bit of a mirror to itself and go, what is it that we are actually doing? Because not a lot of people are really doing anything particularly great. I guess we're kind of fortunate that we can say that we make no money. But, what we get out of it is so much better. And I know that sounds really naff because you've still got bills to pay at the end of the day. But, I'd like to see, I guess, just a different lens through which people start viewing the community more than just the disability community. The other thing we're constantly having a conversation about is, business development officers. We don't have a business development officer. Our business is...
Thank goodness.
So if we were wanting to develop our business, you wouldn't see that person on LinkedIn. They'd be in the garage engaging in conversation with every one of our guys every minute of the day. What's working? What's not working? Where can we improve? How would you do that? That's where our business is developed. It's not having cups of tea and making LinkedIn content. So, there's just still some really yucky stuff that happens in our sector. And I guess if I wanted to see some change, it would be in that space. We've got an opportunity to do whatever we bloody well like. Let's make it happen. Why are we sticking with the same old stuff?
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that.
I recently went to the Brisbane Disability Expo.
Mm-hmm.
And I took my lovely Ellie with me. And it was her first time doing the expo. And it was really almost demoralising, the amount of people that I went up to and I was like, hi, we do, what do you do? And they're all like, the same as everyone else. And I'm like, okay.
And then how was the response when they found out you're a support coordinator?
Yeah. And then I go, so I'm a support coordinator. What makes you different to like the person next to you? And they're like, well, we're unique. And I'm like, in what way? And they're like, stuff. And I'm like,
well, this is where they should have an outcomes framework and they can talk to that.
Yeah.
Because that's what's needed at this point. What's your difference?
Look, I think the last 12 months ago, we had a bit of a shift. It kind of dawned on us that it's all well and good to be building the capacity of the individuals in the garage, but if we're not building the capacity of the broader community, then we're wasting our time. So an awful lot of our time and energy now goes into engaging and building the capacity of the automotive sector. Got nothing to do with disability. But the reality is, for these guys to have some future employment in that industry, absolutely that's where we need to be going. We could be spending an awful lot of time preaching to the choir and engaging with other disability services, but that's not going to make any difference if we're just ignoring the industry we are expecting to employ our guys. So we don't turn up at disability expos anymore. That's not going to do us any good. We turn up at the automotive expo because all of a sudden we've got a sector, it's a $43 billion automotive aftermarket in Australia. Gav and I turned up at their largest conference last year, the only disability service in sight, surrounded by Repco and Supercheap and Bursons and tyre places and all this. And there's this bright pink stall with this weird Wheelnutz Garage people. But we had every single person turn up. What do you do? I need to talk to you. We can't get staff. We really struggle finding anybody to work for us. When we've got 1 in 5 people with a disability, you've got an entire cohort of people out there.
Genius.
All of a sudden, we've got an automotive industry who want to employ people with disabilities. So, when it comes to expos and, cups of teas with other disability services, that's nice, but it's not going to create any great change and it's just not what we're about.
Love all of that. Absolutely love all of that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, letting us have this chat. I have been this has been one of my number one podcasts that I've actually want to get done for, I think, since we came up with the idea. So thank you so much.
No worries. You're more than welcome to come back.
Oh, we will be. I will be. Definitely. I want to look through all the paperwork, all the frameworks, everything. I'm sure I've got 1,000 ideas to ask you.
I feel like we could talk for hours about this because I just love everything that you said. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming along.
Yes.
Be our pleasure.
Bye.
Huzzah!
Thank you for listening. Please share with people you know. Until next time, as the Green Brothers say, don't forget to be awesome.